Hi, I'm Josh, and today I'm going to be running through how to set up a bulk pupil upload. So getting all of your pupils from perhaps an export from SIMS onto the Complete Maths platform. So here I am on the Manage Pupils page. You get there by clicking on your name when on Complete Maths at the top right and clicking on either Manage Pupils straight away or School Settings and then Manage Pupils. And what we can see is our table of pupils that have already been added. Down at the bottom, we see this add button. If we click add, we can see add many. Click on that, then you get to this screen. So the reason why we're doing this, Complete Maths at the moment isn't able to have a integration with SIMS. So this is the quickest way to get all of your pupils uploaded, and it'll just take a few minutes. And we'll run through an example of that process now, just to help you sort out the CSV, which you'll need to upload your pupils with. So when we click on this, we can see a template, which you can download and use, which we'll go to in just a second, as well as some guidelines. So if I click on these, what we can find is the fields that pupils have on Complete Maths. So the required fields, the ones that are needed in order for the import to be successful, are class name, first name, last name, and then suggested other fields that you can add, don't need to be added as part of your import. And we'll go through these in more detail now. So I already have that template imported. Here it is. So this is what you'll get. I've put it on Google Sheets, as that's the thing that I find easiest to use and tinker with the data on. So I'd recommend doing that. You can, of course, do it on a different spreadsheet software. But here are all of our columns and all of the details with some example pupils that are included to show you what they need to be. I've also, for convenience, added a note to these using the guidelines from the previous page so that we know exactly what form this data needs to be in. I also have on the sheet my SIMS equivalent export. So obviously yours might look slightly different depending on what data you have. But here's something that we've used and some of our schools use, so this might look slightly familiar to yours. So what we're essentially going to do is take this data, put it onto our Complete Maths template, and then import that template onto the platform. So let's start. Let's head over to the import. And I'm just going to highlight these three because these are the required fields that we need. And the rest of them we can add, and we will add in this process, but they're not required. So first up, we have class name. Important thing about class name is that it needs to match exactly what is on the platform. So if we go to the platform here and quickly jump to manage classes, we can find our class names here. So these are the classes in this academic year, and these are the ones that we are moving our pupils into. So on our spreadsheet, we need to have these names exactly. Otherwise, as part of the import process, we won't be able to match them. So if we go to our SIMS export, and we have our pupil list here, we find the class column. So we've got that. And immediately just looking at it, we can see that it doesn't quite match. It's got this 20/21 at the end, separated by a space. So that's fine. We can deal with that on our spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do is copy this and move it over to the import page. And we have it here. So I'm going to show you my process. If you're a spreadsheet whiz, then you might have something slightly better than this, and you might want to do it differently, but I'll show you how I do it and you can copy that if needed. So what I'm going to do to separate this is use the split text to columns by space, and then move that apart, and now we have our class name as it needs to be, and then this, which we can actually just get rid of. So now we have our class names. Instead of using that split, you might want to use the find and replace. So if your class names are more different or different in different ways, then you might find that finding and replace works better, and we'll use that find and replace for other columns in this spreadsheet. So that's our classes done. Next up, we've got first name and last name. So typically in the SIMS exports that we've used, they tend to put the surname and forename together, and they capitalize uppercase the surname, which is fine. We can deal with that. So what I'm going to do, and again, you might want to do this slightly differently, but I'm going to paste those full names into the last name column, and then I'm going to use that same split text to columns function, do it by space. And in the majority of cases now we have last name, first name, except for when there's a surname that had a space in it, which we can see here, and that's just a case of taking that, moving it back in here, then we can move that here, and then we have our full list. So that's good. We can take this column, move that over to first name, and then if you don't want this to be capitalized, which I don't in this case, what I'm going to use is a formula that works here called proper, which changes it to just the first letter of each word being capitalized like that, and then hopefully it's going to do it all for me. Then I'm just going to copy that and paste it in here. Get rid of that. Okay, so there we go. So that is our required fields. We could just upload this now once we got rid of these other examples at the top. So in fact, I'm just going to make these different colors so we remember to get rid of them. So you could upload that and it would work fine. But we have lots more data on the SIMS export that we want to include. So let's carry on. Next up, we've got unique reference. So what's the note here from the guidelines? Your school's unique identifier for this pupil only required if another pupil within your school shares the same first name and last name and you have not provided an email address. So if you have a unique identifier, put it in here. It just means that the platform won't come up with an error if you're trying to add a pupil that it thinks you've already added because they have the same name. So let's go to our SIMS export. We can see we have admission number. That's the one that we want to use in this instance. So let's copy that and paste it in. Importantly, I'm not reordering this sheet so that all of these things are matching up when I'm pasting them in. Next up, username. So the guideline for this, if left blank, the username will be automatically generated from the pupil's name. Usernames must be at least 6 characters, letters, digits, underscore, with no spaces. So if we leave this blank, then the platform will generate a username for us, first name dot last name, and then if that is already taken, then it will just add a 1 or 2, 3, etc. to the end. So we're happy for that to happen, and so we're going to leave it blank. If you want this username to match the username that these pupils already use, so for a school intranet or a different learning platform, then you can enter them manually here and it will give them that username as long as it's not taken already. And the same is the case for the login code. So if we leave this blank, it will generate a code for them. It'll be 6 characters long, letters, digits, underscore, with no spaces. So we're going to leave that blank, but if you wanted to add a password that they already use, then you can do that here. Some schools like to add the same password for all pupils, just to reduce the amount that it can, the difficulty that pupils have in logging in. If it's just one password that you can write up on the board. But it's up to you how you do this. We're going to leave it blank, and that's going to generate a code for each pupil. Next up, we have email. So only required if a pupil within your school shares the same first name and last name, and you have not provided a unique reference number. So if we haven't put in a unique reference, then this email can be a source of uniqueness. Let's head to the SIMS export and just confirm that we don't have an email address to add. So we're just going to leave that blank, and that'll be blank on the platform. Next up, we have gender. So the guidelines for this are, and all of these are useful for results analytics and comparing different pupil groups. So the first one, gender, it needs to be set to female, male, or left blank. So if we go to our export and scroll over a little bit, we can see here is our gender column, and we've got capital M's and capital F's, which is fine. It's not the format that we need, but we can work with it. So we'll copy that over into the gender column here. And now what I'm going to have to do is change this from M to male and F to female. And how I'm going to do that is through that find and replace function. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to choose specific range, and I'm going to select these values. Okay. And I'm going to find M and replace with lowercase male. Replace all. See, that's done that. And then I'm going to find F, and I'm going to replace with lowercase female. And there we go. That's done. So that's good to go. And if you wanted to leave one of these blank, you can have a combination of all of those. So that's gender done. Next up, we've got gifted and talented. You might have a slightly different equivalent expression for this, but these next columns need to be either zeros or ones. Zeros and blanks are the same, which is just kind of no entry. And then one is for yes, kind of defining this pupil as having this flag. So gifted and talented, let's head to our export and have a quick look. There doesn't seem to be anything here that we want to use. Perhaps more able would have been the one, but that's all empty, so we don't have to do anything with that. So what we're going to do is just leave that blank. Next up, special education needs, again, needs to be 0 or 1s, so SEN. Let's head back to the export, and there's a couple of things here that we might want to use. So we've got SEN status and SEN need. So matching it will be more similar to this SEN status, yes or no. So let's just copy this and paste it in. Now, of course, we need this to be 0s and 1s rather than N's and K's and E's in this case. So again, we're going to use that find and replace. So we'll choose the specific range again. And then we want N's to be 0s. And then let's just go out of this, and it might be slightly different in your case. There might be a couple of different options, and whether you want to define them as special education needs having this pupil flag. In our case, we're going to say K's and E's are both yes. So let's just move this manually to 1s, and again, we could do that with find and replace instead. And that's good to go. Next up, free school meals. Here we have that. So again, let's copy and paste and do the same, exactly the same process, find and replace using that grouping. We'll have Y's as 1s and N's as 0s. There we go. Next up, pupil premium. Again, you might have slightly different terminology, but if you want to track this, then you can. So we have pupil premium indicator, that's the one for us. Note the difference here is that there aren't N's, it's just blank. We can still work with that. So let's go here, paste that in. We want all of these Y's to be 1s. So let's use that find and replace function again. Turning Y's into 1s. Oh. Turning Y's into 1s and replace all. And then instead of making these zeros, we can just leave them blank. So that's going to fulfill the same purpose. So we can just leave that blank instead of just entering it manually. Next up, we have looked after, heading to the export. There isn't anything here really that we want to use for that. So we're just going to leave that blank as well. We're going to leave the column title in there. As with all the other ones that we've left blank, we're going to keep these titles in just for the export purposes. And that's our spreadsheet made. So lastly, just let's get rid of these extra rows. And just to confirm, we've got our class name, which matches exactly to the Complete Maths classes. First name, we've got those. Last name, we've got those. Unique references, we drew them from the SIMS export as well. Username is going to generate automatically, as is the login code. Email we left blank. Gender is the right format here. Gifted and talented, we didn't have something to put for that, but SEN, Free School Meals, Pupil Premium, we have with our zeros and ones, and looked after, we've left blank as well. So what do we do now? We download this as a CSV. And there it is, downloaded. We head back to Complete Maths. We go to the Manage Pupils page again. And we go to Add Many, Upload CSV. This is the one that we just did. Add pupils. And there we have it. Those pupils are now added. We can just check that for ourselves by, let's look for Tamsin here. So we have Tamsin Hopkins, 7MA1, with their username login code that have been generated automatically, the gender, and then the particular flags that this pupil had, which we can see matches everything there. So all of our pupils are added. And that's it, really. If there are any issues with your upload when you do all that, it will pop up in a little red box and say which row the issue is, and we'll tell you what it is. So typical issues might be that you're trying to upload a pupil that already exists, that the class name doesn't match a class on your platform account, or that some of these formats don't match. So if you haven't got zeros and ones in here, you've got Ys and Ns, that upload won't work. So just make sure you're following the guidelines and copying what's in the template, really. Which you can find both of those at any time on the Manage Pupils page. Just click Add Many, and you can find the template here to download and the guidelines there to look at too. So as you can see, that's taken me how many minutes that's taken, which is not long at all. Good luck. I hope you get your pupils on the platform and that they can start really benefiting from Complete Maths.